At what point did you realize your experiences were bigger than you and needed to be shared?
That's a great question, man. And I get that asked a lot, and again, I never thought that I'd be able to do what I'm doing today in a million years and living the life that I get to live because, SMA to me was like a curse. It was like a death sentence, and I felt like I was in a prison with the wheelchair, like I'm confined to this wheelchair, which again is another mindset. But I thank God I
Yeah.
broke out of that. But the first time I realized that I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing is I was speaking at this high school at the time, and this high school had hired me to come speak to their these students, and these were like dual enrollment students. So it's like these students are in high school, but they're also taking college credits at the same time.
Wow.
And so I met this, I was speaking to this group of students and I'm sharing my story and I'm sharing, some information with them. And at the end, I always, leave some time for Q&A. And, there was a couple kids that asked questions, not too many, because, high schoolers are kind of like, they're timid and, maybe they feel intimidated, but
Or shy. Yeah.
or shy. Yeah. So after that, this one girl comes up to me like privately after, I got off stage and doing my presentation. And she's like, hey, Mr. Flores, can I ask you a question? And I was like, yeah, sure. What's up? And she was like, I'm dual enrolled. I'm in high school, but I'm taking, college credits and it's just very hard. And, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon,
Wow.
um, but it just feels like it's too hard and I don't feel like I want to continue it. And I was like, oh wow. I was like, oh wow, that's a shame. Why do you feel like that? And she was like, well, because it's just too hard. There's a lot of responsibility, there's a lot of expectation. I mean, yo, this girl was bright, bro. She was super
Wow.
smart, very, very, very well spoken. And she was like, but Mr. Flores, I was feeling like giving up and not wanting to continue. But after hearing your story, it gave me the fire to want to keep going because who knows, maybe I'll be the one to find a cure for what you have.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, bro.
Wow.
And it brings tears to my eyes because
Wow.
that's when I was like, wow, like God is really using me in a way that I never thought I would be able to be used. And here I am just sharing my life experiences. And this one girl who's thinking about giving up, now she doesn't want to give up because she's like, maybe I'm the one who's going to find a cure for what you have. And I was like, who
Wow.
knows? Maybe you will be, but we'll never know unless you keep on moving.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a beautiful moment, man. And but that was the moment when I came back home and I told my wife, I was like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing because, this girl didn't even have to share that. She didn't want to share it, obviously, publicly. She wanted to share it privately.
Yeah.
And it was just such a beautiful moment. And so that was the moment where I was like, okay, yeah, this thing is way bigger than me.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful, brother. That's incredible. What what made you decide to write a book instead of just speaking about your message?
Well, once I found out that, leaders are readers and readers are leaders,
Yeah.
and I started getting into the space, I started seeing that most of the speakers, if not all of them, were authors. So I was like, okay, well, if I want to be a speaker, I need to become an author. And again, it was one of those things where I felt disqualified writing a book because I was so young and I felt like I hadn't experienced enough life to be able to write something to where people will respect what I was saying.
Hmm.
But I was like, again, that was another limiting belief. That was another doubting thought and another thing that I was just thinking and saying that was holding me back. Fear was holding me back. People, rejection was holding me back. So all of those things that go along with how we live life sometimes. And excuse me. So I wanted to write the book because I felt like the book can reach more people than I would ever be able to reach individually or even speaking at thousands of events a year. So if I wrote the book and I was able to share some of these things that I experienced and how I was able to overcome it and get through it, and the mindset that I was able to develop through the process, then more people could have access to me in essence without actually accessing me, if that makes sense. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's perfect. I never thought about that because I recently became a published author myself, but I never thought about it from that perspective. During the writing process, did you discover things about yourself you hadn't fully processed before?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Because, as an author, you can relate. Like once you start, one of the questions I get asked is what was the hardest part about writing your book? And I'm always like getting started.
Yeah,
Because right, you
so
don't know
true.
what to do, you don't know what to start, you don't know what to write about. And so it's just start writing. I always tell people just start writing. It doesn't have to be in order right now, but if you have a story that you want to share, or you have a memory that you have from when you were younger that was impactful to you, or that you impacted someone, write it down. And and so that's for me, that was like the hardest part about writing a book, is like is just getting started. Because once you get started, like what I was gonna say, going back to your question, is once you get started, man, like the memories start coming back to you like clockwork, and
Mhm.
you're like, oh man, I forgot about this. And writing about one story or one thought will lead into another thought and another
Mhm.
moment and another experience, and you're like, oh man. And bro, there was times, literally, I'm not even exaggerating, I would be on a Saturday writing for 6 hours straight.
I believe it. I
My
believe it.
wife, my wife is like, babe, lunch is ready. It's gonna get cold. And I'm like, all right, I'll be right there. And I'm just skipping lunches, writing, because I'm like, hey babe, just leave me alone. I'm in the zone, you
Yeah.
know? And it was fun. And and through that process, I've experienced, things that I never wanted to think about. I started finding myself thinking about those things, and then being able to write about it in such a beautiful way that I know was going to impact whoever read it.
Yeah. And what is your book about? Is it like your story? Because I came across and you wrote a children's book, right? You recently released a children's book.
Yeah, yeah. So I've written 4 books so far. My first book was an ebook,
Okay.
and it was a short, like 35, 40 page book. It's called Finding Your Greatness.
I
And
love it.
then, yeah, it's called Finding Your Greatness. And then my second book, which was my first paperback book, physical book, it was called Don't Let Your Struggle Become Your Standard. That's the one I wrote because I wanted to more people to access the information, and the information that I had, and the stories, through that book. That was the one that became the number one bestseller on Amazon.
Wow.
And I also got the forward by Les Brown, which, if you're in the speaking space, Les Brown is one of the top dogs that's ever spoken on the planet.
Yeah,
And
he's a legend.
yeah, so he wrote the forward to my book, and that's a whole other story that I wrote about in the book as well, like my experience meeting him and how he just put me under his wing, and we went on a 26 city tour, and it was just incredible, and but the reason I wrote that was the reason I had him write the forward was because when I met him, again, he was my mentor before I even knew him in person. I followed his social media and his website and everything. But when I finally met him, my wife was like, "Oh, babe, don't ask him to write the forward. You've asked him for so much already,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, closed mouths don't get fed, and you never know what's gonna happen, right? I was like,
Right.
asking you shall receive type of thing. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna ask him, and he said, yeah, he did it, and it became a number 1 bestseller, and that opened up a bunch of doors for me as well. And it was a dream come true, man, because I really love this guy. I loved his storytelling style, and the stories he told were so powerful. And he was just an incredible dude, and I wanted to be like that. I wanted to emulate him. I didn't want to be him, but I wanted to be like him. And I wanted to be able to change lives like he changed lives. And I wanted to be able to crush stages like he crushed stages, and make those connections and build those relationships. And I was like, yo, if this guy could do it, and he got 2 arms and 2 legs that work, then I can do it too.
I love
And
it. I love it.
I was like, if all he's doing is using his mouth and his mind and his stories, I got a bunch of those, and I can do that too.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been doing, man, ever since.
That's incredible, man. What does resilience look like on ordinary days, not just breakthrough moments?
Man, resilience just looks like, you know, like to keep on moving forward even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Right. Even when life tells you, sit down, or, you can't, you got to take a break.